Steve Frank, California's favorite political pundit. We love it when he comes to visit us. He's been doing this for over 50 years, and he knows everything there is to know about politics. So be sure you subscribe to California Political Review at californiapoliticalreview.com. And with that, I'll welcome Steve. Good morning.
Well, thank you very much, Wendy, Jan, and the crowd. I always enjoy the first Friday of every month having the opportunity of speaking to you and to, let's see, so start my video. Okay.
That would be me. Technical error. Sorry. I thought I was stopping my own video.
Oh, okay. There I am. Okay. Getting used to this Zoom world, and I kind of understand I need to see myself when I speak. So when I do by Zoom, one of the great problems that we have is as individuals is that we don't have enough information about what's going on. One of the great stories of our time is that of the $75 billion surplus that Governor Newsom has announced that we have. The Legislative Analyst's Office says the surplus is actually only 38 billion, and you get to the 38 billion by adding money from the reserves of the state fund to the general fund. Now, the legislature is going to spend the 75 billion. The Legislative Analyst's Office says there's only 38 billion. And in reality, we do not have a surplus at all. Last week, it was announced that Governor Newsom is going to borrow $20 billion from the federal government in order to pay to continue paying unemployment insurance checks to those who are unemployed. So if we have a surplus, in his words, of 75 billion, why is he borrowing and paying interest from the federal government for $20 billion to pay unemployment checks since we have the surplus? In other words, it's all smoke and mirrors. There is no surplus. And when researching that $20 billion, I also found out that there's another $4 billion that the federal government has loaned the state of California under Jerry Brown to pay for unemployment checks that have not been paid back. And we're paying interest on that. So when you say you have a $75 billion surplus, you're lying, period. No explanation needed. When you have to borrow $20 billion, you haven't paid off $4 billion, you don't have a surplus. But let's go a little bit further on that. Currently, CalPERS, the state pension system, has over $1 trillion in unfunded liabilities. What surplus? CalSTRS, the teacher pension system, has over $400 billion in unfunded liabilities. What surplus? The state health care plan has a little over $200 billion in unfunded liabilities. What surplus? And then adding insult to all this injury, the state of California, according to the LAO's office, has over $1 trillion in deferred maintenance that we haven't done in close to 25 years. Some of it's 25 years old, some of it's 2 years old, but in total, it's over $1 trillion. So when we're being told that we have 75 billion in surplus and the legislature is going to spend that 75 billion, it doesn't exist. And so that we're being fed just a bill of goods by the legislature and the Democrats just to buy votes. How are they going to buy votes? Well, Governor Newsom has figured out one great way. There's a lot of people in the state who have parking tickets and don't pay them. So if you have a parking ticket and haven't paid it since 2015, you won't have to pay it at all. The taxpayers will be paying for it. That's one of the ways he's going to buy votes. As some of you may know, school enrollment is down in the state at least 162,000 kids. And that's what they estimate is probably over 200,000. But that doesn't mean you don't give more money to education. So the Governor Newsom's budget gives, even though you have 162,000 fewer students, they're going to increase the budget for schools by $27 billion. That's why we have financial problems. We have failed schools that get more money to fail worse. How are they going to fail worse? Almost every school district in the state has turned into a racist headquarters by teaching what they call CRT, critical race theory. And that critical race theory means that they're teaching that one race is inferior and another race is superior. That's what racists do. And that's what the school districts are going to do. So yesterday, Cal Matters put out an interesting story. We are now going to face a teacher shortage in the state of California because they have mass number of teachers that have decided they don't want to teach racism. And if they're white teachers, they don't want to stand in front of their classroom and by order of the board of trustees to admit because they are white that they are racist. Then you have teachers that are being forced to teach kindergarten kids about sex, first grade kids, teach them about sexual positions, and teachers don't want to do that. So there is going to be a major shortage of qualified teachers. But don't worry, it's taken care of. The legislature has made it easier for people to become a teacher. No longer will you have the same tests to get your teacher credential. Over half the testing for teacher credentials are being done away with. And those that remain have been dumbed down, and the bar to pass them has been lowered dramatically. So we're going to have people who are unqualified in the classroom, who are admitting that they're racist, that prefer to teach about sex or being told they have to teach about sex. And the classes have given up the idea of education as a priority and instead have made racism, hatred, bigotry, all part of the curriculum that you have to pass. And now we have many school districts saying that as a student, instead of taking that extra math class, instead of taking that extra science class, you're going to have to take a class in ethnic studies where you're going to stand up as a white student and say you are inferior. And as a black student, you're going to stand up and say, I am superior. And all the students are going to stand up and say, we're racist. That's what they're going to mandate for kids. So if that's not enough, they're making sure that our kids don't get a quality education. How are they going to do that? As many of you know, starting in the 7th grade, some children who are qualified start to get advanced math classes. And then you have what they call AP classes, where advanced studies are done for the kids starting in the 9th grade. Well, I don't know if you know that, but that's racist. And so many school districts are now getting rid of all advanced math classes, all AP classes, until the students are in the 12th grade, by which time those classes will mean nothing by getting these kids into great colleges. Kids who would normally go to Yale or Harvard or Berkeley or UCLA will be forced to go to community colleges because they won't have had the education needed because the racists have determined that quality education in and of itself is a racist object. Our education system has totally failed and will continue to fail our students. And it's not because of a mistake, it is because of policy. They are literally trying to make sure the teachers are dumbed down, the students are dumbed down, And at the same time, those parents who can either leave the state or they leave the government school system. And by the way, there's no such thing as a public school system. The public does not run the system. We may pay for it, but it's not our system. It is run by the special interests as well as by the unions. Parents have nothing to say about it. And if parents stand up and say, my child won't take a class in racism and won't say that they are a racist or superior or inferior, the school district and the principal bully the parent, forcing them to leave the school because they don't want parents in those schools that are willing to stand up to the racists who are running the schools. Moving to another subject, which is water, and I know that you're going to have a major program on it. What Jan was referring to before, that little fish, is called the Delta smelt. And we have lost billions in development, tens of thousands of jobs because of the Delta smelt. Now, let me explain what the Delta smelt is. It is about the size of an anchovy, and it is used not for a banquet, it is used as fish bait to capture other fish. That's what we're killing jobs and the economy for, not developing our land and not giving people the opportunity of getting the water. Because one of the reasons we have the water shortage in the state is that the state of California, to make sure that the water is the proper temperature for the Delta smelt, holds back water from being used by the people. One of those problems is by doing so, they build up the salt content of the underlying ground under the water and ruin farmland because of the buildup of the salt in the water that is available. And so we lose farmland, we lose jobs, we lose development, all because of fish bait. And let's call it what it is. Delta smelt is fish bait, about the size of an anchovy. Now, personally, I love my pizza with anchovies. I'll even put a Delta smelt on if needed, but I'm not going to kill water and jobs because of fish bait. So let's talk about another thing that just came out this morning that's important to us. While the while the rest of the nation is growing jobs, the state of California is continuing to lose jobs. State of California lost another 75,000 jobs in the month of May. Worse than that, thanks to the government ineptitude, incompetence, and mismanagement, there's 251,000 people who are unemployed for the last 21 days who can't even get their phone calls answered by the EDD department, by the unemployment department. They can't even get an answer. They can't get online. 251,000 people who deserve checks can't even get an answer from the department that issues the checks because they're that backlogged and incapable of doing the job that they're supposed to do. And worse, they're in a total of $24 billion in liabilities that they have to borrow from the federal government in order to pay. So we're going to have a continued problem of unemployment in the state of California. And this goes with the issue of the opening up of the state of California before we get to the issue of the status of the recall. Now, supposedly on June 15th, we're going to have the opening of the state of California. Well, Gavin Newsom is going to allow the counties to open it up, but that doesn't mean the counties will open it up. But worse, the corporations are going to be the ones that make a decision as to how open they are. For instance, if you go to Dodger Stadium, and for some of you who don't know, I live in Ventura County, not too far from Dodger Stadium. If you go there, you will be segregated. If you have had a vaccination, you will go to one section of the stadium. If you are like me wearing a t-shirt, now remember, if I decide right now I'm a woman, I could go to Target, Walmart, Costco, Macy's, anywhere I want and declare myself as a woman and use a women's restroom because I identify as a woman. So I have a t-shirt that says I identify vaccinated. And doesn't mean that I've been vaccinated, but I identify as such. And so what's going to happen is I would be forced to sit in the upper rafters of Dodger Stadium if I want to see a Dodger game in person, which I don't because I don't like segregation and I don't like racists because the Dodgers have declared that one race is superior and one race is inferior. And so I don't go to places like that are racist. Well, at least I try not to. And so even though we are going to be opened up, we're still going to be segregated. And the state is trying to push restaurants into having two sections, vaccinated and unvaccinated. And if you're unvaccinated, you'll have to wear a mask in your segregated section. But here's the deal. Stanford University did a compilation of 67 studies regarding the value of the mask. Not one said there was a value. Johns Hopkins University 3 weeks ago released a study showing the masks have little or no value at all to your health. Now, it may make the lying Anthony Fauci happy to wear a mask or a double mask, but what's going to happen is the state of California just issued a mandate to businesses that they're going to have to provide their workers with an N95 mask, not just one of these flimsy, phony masks that we all wear or that you could buy from the Lake County GOP that says this mask is as worthless as Joe Biden. You're going to have an official N95 mask. They're from $3 to $5 a piece, and employers are going to have to provide those for their employees, and which of course grows the cost of doing business, but also says to the employees, even if they're vaccinated, the vaccination meant nothing. And so we're going to see a lot of distrust, discord. You won't know when you go into a business whether you are free to live or have to live under a bullying mandate. And the reason the government is doing this is because they can't do it themselves except inside of government offices. So if you decide to go to the DMV, if you decide to go to the office of the Secretary of State or go to the Capitol, you will still be living as you are today. No, there'll be social distancing, masks needed, even if you've taken the vaccination. That means nothing, which proves to me that they don't believe in the vaccination, which, by the way, please note, is an experimental drug. It is still experimental. The FDA has not approved it. And under federal law, you can't mandate people to take an experimental drug. And they're doing it anyway. They're violating state law. Under state law and federal law, if you're selling a drug or a medicine of some sort, you have to, as part of your advertising for it, you also have to show the risks of that drug, heart attack, strokes, blood clotting, etc. Please note that as you watch TV and you see all these celebrities whine that you got to take the vaccine, you see the federal government spending money, you've got to take the vaccine. Nowhere does it meet the federal law of saying what the risks are, nor does it say in the advertising, this is not an approved drug, that this is an experimental drug. There's so many violations of federal and state law that it's enough to take it off the market until they do so, but government wants to have it. The good news is, because they have broken the law, the liability immunity that Congress and the state capital, state legislature has given pharmaceutical companies and itself from liability and lawsuits when people die or get ill from taking it is null and void because they violated the law in the first place. So there is no immunity once it gets to court because government and the corporations and the ad agencies have violated the law. Really going to be very interesting to watch that. The last issue before I open for questions is that of the status of the recall. I've been on a series of conference calls and Zoom calls in the last few days, and everybody's saying the exact same thing. The question is, when are we going to have the recall? And the answer is nobody knows. Nobody is sure as to when the recall will be held. It is possible, literally, that the recall will be held somewhere between mid-August and mid-September, and it'll be legal to do so. In other words, 2.5 months from now, the recall will be done and over with. And that includes the 6 days, and that's what we're predicting now, of filing being open for candidates. At this point, there's, I believe, 143 people who have opened up FPPC accounts as if they're going to run for governor. My prediction originally was it'll be about 150. If they do this very shortened period of time, it'll probably be 60 to 80 candidates to run for governor. You may have noticed that the California Association of Realtors yesterday or 2 days ago gave $1.5 million to protect Gavin Newsom. If any of you have Netflix, you'll be happy to know that the founder of Netflix, the CEO, Reed Hastings, up in Silicon Valley, your neck of the woods, gave $3 million to protect Gavin Newsom. They have raised about $20 million so far, and they will raise whatever it takes to keep Gavin Newsom. And it doesn't look like there'll be a serious Democrat running for governor on the second part of the ballot. First part is, shall Gavin Newsom be recalled as governor of California? Yes or no? And then on the bottom part will be the candidates to replace him if the upper part wins. Looks like the Democrats have scared and bullied serious Democrats from running for governor. So it's for them, it's going to be Newsom or nothing. So things are moving rather quickly on the recall end of it. The most important part is on the grassroots end, people are still energized, and the Democrats now are very concerned that there won't be a turnout to protect the Newsom in the corner office. So the unions have made a determination that they will be the head of the spear in order to get the voter turnout. So voter turnout to get Democrats out to vote to protect the governor is going to be in the hands of the unions. And that's going to be fascinating to see if the unions could get out enough people who want to keep the disaster known as Gavin Newsom, or if people who have been harmed by Newsom, crime victims, churchgoers, parents who have kids who wanted to get an education, individuals that have lost their jobs, the 35.9% of small business owners that totally closed down in the last year, who've lost their businesses, if they will coalesce, not in a formal coalition, but in a informal one, and just say, we want to thank Governor Newsom for the economic disaster, for the spiritual disaster, the constitutional disaster, we're going to vote yes on the recall. That could be a winner. And just to give you a heads up, you may have noticed in the last week, so far, Governor Newsom has lost $3.5 million in lawsuits brought against him for his edict to close churches. There are dozens of other lawsuits that have not been decided, but will be against him. And there will be settlements where the taxpayers are going to finance the unconstitutional actions of the governor. There are a massive number of restaurants throughout the state that have lawsuits pending that they will win, and the settlement will bring money to them, but that money is actually from the taxpayers. So that's where we are with the recall. And as a last message, even though this is June of 2021, in a year, we're going to have elections for Assembly, State Senate, and Congress and constitutional offices. This is the time to start finding good candidates for those offices. It's also the right time to start thinking about fall of 2022, when we'll be running candidates for city council, school board, and other local offices. So this is the time to start thinking about that. You have the summer off, and I would recommend to this group and any other group to form a working group to start developing candidate research, development, and vetting of candidates, and start the process of training them. That way we'll be prepared for 2022. Jan and Wendy, thank you very much. I look forward to any of your questions.
Always very interesting. Thanks, Steve. A reminder to the audience, if you have a question for Steve, do the hand up thing as part of the, I think it's reactions down here. Yeah, you can hit reactions, and then there's a raise hand under it. Okay, Larry Elder, in or out?
Out. Never. He was never in.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And Rick Grinnell is still out, correct?
Now, let me give you a full answer to that question. That's not a yes or no answer. He is out. He is not going to be running in the recall election in August, September, October, whenever it is. He will be running for governor if we don't win that recall in 2022, which is why he has formed his group called Fix California to do those things that the state Republican Party is refusing to do. He's going to be suing the Secretary of State to get rid of dead people. I know this is a controversial issue, but to get rid of dead people from the voting rolls, and those people live in Texas, Arizona, and Tennessee, to stop them from getting California ballots as well. He also is going to be deeply involved in the Educational Choice Initiative and supporting it through his foundation, through his foundation, Fix California. I must mention, full disclosure, I'm going to be one of the two people involved in leadership statewide, putting together groups, county by county, as well as organization by organization. I'm going to come to your organization for help to get signatures for the Educational Choice Initiative. We should be able to start gathering signatures in mid-September. And we need 1 million good signatures. We're going for 1.5 million signatures, and we believe we could get the signatures without having to hire or pay anybody for the signatures.
Now, you had an article this morning that it was about we should be doing ballot initiatives like crazy, but it said that you have to have your stuff in by this August, a couple of months, to make the 2022 ballot.
Well, if you're going to make the 2022 ballot, the first step is putting your initiative into the Secretary of State's office. Then it goes through a process there that takes 1 or 2 months. Then it goes to the Attorney General for approval, back to the Secretary of State. Then you have 180 days, once approved, to get the signatures. So now you're talking about March or April of next year for the November ballot. So it's a time problem. And so if you're going to do one, you got to, and for instance, what we're doing is no later than the first week of July, a month from now, we're presenting to the Secretary of State our initiative. So by the middle of September, we're able to put it on the streets for signatures.
Okay, interesting. So have you heard anything about an election integrity initiative at all? Is anyone picking that up?
There is a discussion of it. I have to remind you that there's no fraud or corruption in the state of California on the election. So says the chair of the state Republican Party. So says the general counsel of the Republican Party, which is why they don't believe in it. Now, they do have a committee. I don't know about you, but when I do a committee, I usually have 5, 7, 9 people on a committee. They have 2 people on the committee. That's it.
Is Randy Burr
And
holds one of
one person didn't even ask to be on the committee. They were just assigned to it.
them? Surprise.
So that's how serious they are with that. So yeah, there will be. I don't believe for 2022 there'll be an election integrity initiative. I do believe very strongly 2024 we're going to have a very serious election integrity initiative based on the building up of a group of volunteer signature gatherers, starting with the recall people who are moving over to do signature gathering for the educational choice, who will then move over to do 2 initiatives for 2024. And there's a group of us who are working on a long-term plan to create an informal organization of volunteer signature gatherers and growing that. So when you have a good initiative, you can get it on the ballot without having to hire people.
Yeah, that sounds great. Can you say what the second initiative is for 2024?
Still under discussion by a group as to what it'll be. So
Okay.
I have some ideas as to what I want and what they want. And so we'll come to some agreement in the next year or so for that.
So election integrity for now is lost except for what Linda Payne has going on.
Now,
Right?
I wouldn't call it lost. I would say she's doing such great work
Yeah.
that she is making a difference. We have exposed corruption throughout the state. You may know that she has a lawsuit, or Election Integrity Project California has a lawsuit against 13 counties that are refusing to do an audit. Now, let me explain about that. A good friend of mine is Randall Jordan, who's the chair of the San Luis Obispo Central Committee, and he's been pushing in that county to have an audit. So he has a meeting with the registrar of voters of the county, who's a friend of his, a gentleman by the name of Tommy Gong. And Tommy Gong says his hands are tied. He's not allowed to do an audit. And he showed a contract between San Luis Obispo County and Dominion, giving San Luis Obispo County the voting machines. And in the contract, it says that Dominion has the right to veto any audit of their system. In other words, a vendor controls our legal status of having legal and honest elections, and Dominion's refusing to allow it. Therefore, the county can't by contract. And as best we could tell, in all 13 counties that we're asking for the audit, and in all 40 counties that have Dominion, that section is in it. In the state of California, Dominion has stopped any chances of us finding fraud because they won't allow it. So that's the background that very few people know about.
Did not have any idea that was out there. That's interesting. I wonder if it's in the Santa Clara County one.
If
And it is.
Santa Clara County has Dominion, it's in it.
We do. We do.
Then there's a section of the contract that the county leases the machines from Dominion, and in that lease contract is that section.
That should be on the front page of every newspaper around.
In San Luis Obispo, it is.
Good. All it takes is a couple cracks in the dam there. By the way, is there any intel on what's going on in Arizona?
You may know that the Republican leadership in the Pennsylvania State Senate visited, and they liked what's going on. As of a couple of 3 days ago, sometime earlier this week, they had gone through about half of the ballots. And of course, you also need to know that in New Hampshire, they have found massive, what they call vote switching. If you voted for Jones, your vote was counted as for Smith. And they call that vote switching.
I thought they were blaming that on creases in the ballot or some nonsense like that.
It doesn't matter what their excuse for it is, they switched your vote.
Wow, that is so pathetic. Okay, guys, I could go on here all day. I love talking to Steve, but if you have questions, either raise your hand, or it looks like some people have put questions in chat here. Peter Soule wants to know if he flies domestically in July, is he going to have a vaccine? Any word on that?
If you want to go to a Giant game up your way, I can't believe I use that word Giants. I'm a Dodger fan. I did. If you want to go see the Giants, if you want to go to a movie theater without wearing a mask, you'll have to. Many restaurants will segregate you if you haven't by July. But the good news, Peter, if you get your vaccine in the month of June, you could get a free beer in California from Anheuser-Busch. Cool. So if you want a free glass of beer, that's what you do. Or today they're going to announce 15 people that won the lottery of the vaccine who are going to get $50,000 for taking the vaccine. That could be you the next lottery. Or in total, if you were to take, and Peter, I know that you like to take Jen out to dinner. If you get the vaccine, you can get a $50 gift card to take Jan to a nice place for dinner.
How nice. Don't you love paying for that?
$116 million worth of taxpayer money being used as bribes for people to take an experimental drug that they refuse to tell the truth about.
That is so pathetic. It should just be, if you want it, you take it.
Yeah. Well, let me give you a phrase I'm using to people who are telling me I have to take the vaccine. My first question, Wendy, you asked me if I've taken the vaccine. So Wendy, I understand you're pro-choice. You believe that a woman's body is her choice. My body, my choice.
Am I right? Yeah.
So you're allowed, my body, my choice, to kill a baby, but you don't want me to have my body, my choice on taking an experimental drug.
Of course, there's like problems like that all over. Everything to do with the Dems is like that. Brad has a question, but we're having trouble here. Ask to unmute. Okay, Brad, what's your question?
Hey, good morning, Wendy and
Morning.
Steve. Hey, Steve, it's always good to hear you. I guess I've had more of a comment than a question, but there might be a question coming out of it. But with regard to your comment regarding the baseball in Dodger Stadium,
yes,
I just went to a game this past week in San Francisco, and you know they made a big deal about you got to bring your vaccination card and all this stuff. But when I went in, and no, they weren't even enforcing anything. It was just like a regular day. They just welcomed me in. Some people were wearing masks, some weren't, but it was it was a little shocking. It was kind of just like a normal game. People were laughing and having a good time. And some people were wearing masks. Most of the ushers were wearing their masks because I guess it was a requirement. But I was just surprised that no one was making a big deal about masks or anything. So I just wanted to kind of pass that along for anybody thinking about going to the game. But obviously, it was limited to the number of people being allowed into the park. But it was just like I said, it was very, very a welcoming environment.
Well, this is going on, Brad, all over. Yesterday, my wife and I were looking for new furniture for the den, and we went into Lazy Boy and 3 or 4 other furniture places in the area, and everyone had a sign on the door, mask required. So you go inside wearing the mask. As soon as you get in, you take the mask off and you go about your business, and they say nothing.
That
And
must be a county thing.
and so this was in Ventura County, but they had the mask required, but nobody was wearing a mask. They took them off the moment they got in, but they met the requirement. You couldn't enter without wearing a mask.
Right.
Oh, pathetic. Okay.
The other quick thing too, with regard to you mentioning about who is donating to Newsom's anti-recall campaign, I guess, or whatever. I guess SEIU donated the union dues, $1 million in their union dues to.
That's not correct, Brad. That's not correct. They didn't donate. They stole money from union
Well,
workers
that's true.
to give to Newsom.
Right.
Let's be accurate.
Yes. Yeah. You're absolutely right. And
SEIU gave money,
$1 million.
but they just flipped the head of SEIU.
No. That was a local, the state SEIU
Oh,
over
okay.
the object. Now, the local guy does not take office until June 30th. So they had an emergency meeting last night so they could get the money to Newsom without any legal problems.
Oh, that is.
But remember, the money was first stolen from workers who were told, unless you pay us a bribe, you don't get to work.
Wow. And I wanted to ask you also, the new SEIU lead, is he just playing with Newsom here about, I'm not going to support you, and then we start with the extortion talks?
He's already started the extortion talks.
Okay.
The reason he won was that Newsom cut the pay with permission of the SEIU leader, Yvonne Walker, of the workers. And by the way, that union has 100,000 members statewide. His local has 100,000 members statewide. I don't know how many SEIU statewide there are in total, but his union, his local, has 100,000 members. And so he's already said he wants bonus money, and he wants wage increases and benefit increases. And because the governor cut the pay, we're not going to support him, and we're not going to give him any money.
So this is an extortion thing.
Total, but please do not be redundant. Unions mean extortion.
I stand corrected. Okay, Dave Westerman has a question.
Yes, real quickly, assuming we have a successful election or recall of Newsom and a good governor, and then in 2022 continue as a good governor, what kind of power does the governor have to combat the CRT garbage that's in the schools now?
Well, first of all, let's say for the sake of discussion, Newsom is recalled and we get John Jones as the new governor. I'm not trying to give any names of real candidates. So John Jones is the new governor who's a Republican. That's great, except for the fact that the Democrats still have a supermajority in the Senate, supermajority in the Assembly, regardless of what the governor decrees, regardless of what he vetoes, it could be overturned by the legislature. So in effect, he has a gavel and no power. Now, that's between now and November of 2022. Then you get to the November elections of next year, And the question is, will we be able to break the supermajority of the Democrats in the Assembly and State Senate? Excuse me. And in the meantime, we have the redistricting that's going to occur at the end of this year that could harm the Republicans even further and make it more difficult to break the Democrat supermajority. So I don't know what they could do except run good candidates in November 2022 and make the comparison between the death spiral of the Democrats, the racist spiral, the anti-Semitic spiral of the Democrats, their anti-education spiral, their pro-crime spiral, and hopefully there'll be enough people left in the state who haven't moved out yet to vote them out of office.
Plus them putting up with the dictatorship this whole last year and not doing anything about it.
People have been bullied into believing the government is telling the truth. The great news of the past week is that Tony Fauci has been found out to be a total absolute liar and cheat. He knew that it was the Wuhan lab that created the virus. It was not natural. And why is that important? Because you treat a natural virus differently than a lab-produced virus. And that's why we had the lockdown, because it was a natural virus, but it wasn't. We destroyed our nation economically because of that. We threw out a president because of that. Tony Fauci's lies. Now, I said on a radio show yesterday and the day before, different shows, I said, I do not want Tony Fauci fired. I want him indicted.
Yes, I'm 100% with you there. Switching gears, Denise McElhaney said she went to the post office and to the grocery store yesterday with no mask and no one said a thing, which is great. And that's in Santa Clara County, which is really surprising. Then Gail says she wants to know if July 15th or June 15th is really going to be the last day for mask wearing. What do you think this is going to do there?
Let's talk about Santa Clara County for a moment. There's a new rule for your county that says every employer must know which employees have been vaccinated and which haven't, and they have to track those employees who are not vaccinated. Imagine the confusion that's going to cause. And I bring that up because I don't know if I had it in today's newsletter. I don't think it's tomorrow's, but in today's newsletter, I had it, I think it was today, had an article about a company spending $12 billion opening up a microchip factory in Arizona. And so I took a look at that and I realized, oh, first of all, California doesn't get the benefit of that, but worse or better maybe, the good news for you guys is your traffic is going to be lessened on the freeways, because those people who would have had the jobs if it had stayed in California are now going to move to Arizona where the jobs are. And so we're continuing to depopulate the state of California through this. And this business, let me use two words for everybody here. Be brave. Let's stop pretending the government knows what it's doing. We know it isn't. Every time they say, hey, this is what the government mandates, ask what the punchline to the joke is, because they know there's no studies about masks, social distancing, etc.
And Fauci even said that in his emails.
Right. I mean, the guy gave every evidence for a district attorney or an attorney general to indict him for fraud and corruption by misadvising government agencies, from the president to the governor to your mayor, on how to handle the pandemic, which is not a pandemic. It's correct, as said by Jan before, it's a scamdemic.
That's right. And Judy says, do employers in Santa Clara County have to report the vaccine status to the health department? Interestingly enough, I was listening in to the county meeting this week, and they were saying they don't know what they would do if people started reporting this information. They don't know what they do with it, but they asked the attorney if he's gearing up for lawsuits. Have you heard anything about that?
Yes. The crazies make all these rules and regulations without thinking on how they have to enforce it. And so in reality, yes, they will have to turn it into the health department, but they have no ability to track people just because. So you have 50 employees, 12 don't have the vaccination. Now, where are they at 1 o'clock today? Where are they at 7 o'clock today? Do you have to track them if they go to the bowling alley? Do you have to track them if they go to the grocery store? They're your employees. That wasn't in the ordinance that was passed. So yeah, they're going to have lots of lawsuits because it's so inconsistent and so unconstitutional. And if I was a business employer, I would say, here's what it's going to cost me to do it. Pay the first month, and when you do, I'll do it.
I can't believe that employers are willing to pay for what it's costing them to do this.
They are afraid, and that's the extortion. So you have a business license, you have a liquor license, you have a professional credential. They may come after me. And so to protect yourself, or you may have a contract with the government, a catering service, for instance, a water service like Arrowhead Water or whatever service you have up in Santa Clara County. And so you have all these different services that are afraid they won't be able to keep their contracts if they don't do it.
So they're really getting strong-armed into it. I was happy to note my oldest works for Apple, and they, of course, here in Santa Clara County had to ask the question, well, he just types it into a database, and they said, this is against our privacy laws, so we're not even going to look. We just have to have the records. I can't believe that Apple was that way, but my youngest works for Amazon, and they told him that they're going to ask the question every 2 weeks until he gets the vaccine. So I don't know. It's kind of pathetic.
That it is.
Okay.
That it is.
Jan has one last question here before we quit today. Oh, wait, Marilyn has a question. Marilyn, go for it.
I went to the dentist and they asked me, so how do you feel about the vaccine? I said, don't even bring it up because I am not going to get a vaccine I don't trust. So don't even ask me. Because they can give you one if you say, yeah, okay. So my question is, are they keeping track of people who refuse it and tell the health department that?
Yes, they are. But let me make a suggestion. There is, and I will find it and I will send it to Jan and Wendy, and they can forward it to everybody. There is a form that a doctor who's also an attorney has created called a liability waiver. So your dentist asks you, have you taken the vaccine? We'll give it to you. And what you want to do is present your waiver to the dentist and say, you're willing to take the liability if I get ill or die if you give me the vaccine. Be assured they won't. And that will take care of the matter.
Oh, the world's going crazy. Anyway,
So how do I get that waiver?
I'm going to send a copy to Jan and Wendy, and then they'll be able to forward it to you.
Okay.
Forward it to everybody.
Yeah, to everybody.
Okay.
Okay, Jan, last question is yours.
Well, actually, I have two questions now, if that Steve's okay. What do you think if we all resisted? I mean, I did this thing. I went to Home Depot with no mask on, looked for my stuff, even asked for help, and then went to check out. Nobody told me to put on a mask. I think we're being too compliant. And would you encourage those that are willing to stand up to just stop being so compliant?
I would say two words again: be brave. That's what it's going to take to end this tyranny of government. The whole idea behind the lockdown, the social distancing, the masks, the vaccine mandates has nothing to do with your health. It has everything to do with government trying to push the envelope to see how compliant and gullible the American public would be to be controlled by a tyrannous government. And that's what this is about. It has nothing to do with your health. Otherwise, Tony Fauci would have told the truth to begin with. He knew what he was doing. In 1982, he made the shocking statement that AIDS and HIV can be transmitted if you're in the same house as somebody. Oh, so what did you do? You isolated people. And we allowed that then. Now it's a gigantic isolation. And Fauci learned the lesson that people are that gullible, they'll believe anything a government agent says, truthful or not. So they tried it before with AIDS. They lied to us about that. And now Fauci comes back 40 years later and lies big time and literally destroys our nation.
My last question. Right now, I'm concerned that I don't see anything happening regarding organizing for the recall by the California Republican Party, nor I don't see anything locally. Okay, if the recall is going to happen as early as mid-August, what should the county Republican parties be doing right this minute?
Staying out of it, hiding under their desks, and stop harming the cause. Now, as far as the state party is involved, and I'll tell you what's going on though. A state party is sending out beg letters asking for money, claiming they're going to open offices and staffing them up. If you read my newsletter today, you know that's not only a lie, but those offices that are going to be open are not for the purpose of the recall, but to help reelect Republican members of Congress and to pay salaries for the CRP staff. And so and they're going to do nothing. Now, that being said, Rescue California, Recall Gavin 2020, Cal Revival, and Reform California, all four of those groups have put together individually and collectively a grassroots campaign to move the ball to get a yes vote. None of them are endorsing a candidate, excuse me, a candidate for governor. They're only going to be asking for yes votes for the recall and let the governor candidates do their thing. They're not getting involved in that election, but they are doing a very strong grassroots effort. I was on the phone last night with a county that is going to be doing their own thing, because this is what the state party wants to do. State party wants all the counties to run a recall effort under their auspices. Now, what does that mean? The counties will then turn over their donor lists and their volunteer lists to the state party. Now, if you remember, all the Trump people were forced to go to the state party. None of them through the state party were allowed to work for Trump. They all worked for other candidates in areas where they didn't live. Most of a good portion of those people dropped out because they didn't want to work for the Republican Party. This is just another scam to get money and names of people to get money from for their candidates. They have nothing to, so I would just ignore them, leave them alone. There will be efforts announced very shortly on a grassroots level, what's going to be done. If you want signs, Reform California, Carl DeMaio Caldamayo's group, has signs. I think they already have them. Go to his website and they have flyers and other stuff. And Rescue California has put together an extremely robust grassroots effort to get a yes vote. So that's going very well. There are a few counties that have separated from the CRP, County Central Committees, that want no part of the CRP. I spoke with them yesterday, and they're running their own operation. I'm helping them, and some other people are helping them as well.
Okay, well, that answered my question. Okay, well, Steve, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you back in September, right?
I'm looking forward to it. Maybe someday I'll actually able to see your shining face right in front of me.
In person soon.
In person,
Yeah.
looking forward to it. Okay, thank
Okay.
you so much. And we appreciate everybody who's been on this call.